Hey everybody, I'm glad to be able to come back and join you for a brand new small group session based on the sermon. This week is a bit of a standalone sermon. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Next week, we're going to begin a brand new series called The Lost Words of Jesus. I hope that you enjoy circling up for the 3 weeks as we talk about some fascinating things that Jesus had to say and really orient our hearts and our minds to be aligned with Him and what He's all about. But this week, we talked about running to win. We looked at the words of the Apostle Paul, and we really just zoomed in and fixated all of our attention on what it means for us to be a church, not just individuals, although that's important too, but us collectively as a church, being a church that runs to win. And I hope, I don't know if I did a good job, but I hope I did a good job of communicating just how proud I am of this church, just how grateful I am to be a part of this church. Last weekend, I thought was a shining example of what the heart of our church is really like. It's one of many things we could talk about, but last week you rallied to collect 223 big boxes for groceries to respond to food insecurity for families connected to 6 different schools in our community. That's a big deal. We estimate that it takes about $100 to fill up one of those boxes. That means our church responded instantaneously by giving somewhere around $22,000+ to help love on and serve families. That's a big deal. There was over $6,000 given for the mission store. One of the things that I didn't have time to get into this weekend's message is that there are a number of people who were just here at our church this weekend because they come whenever they're at Mayo. They live out of town. They're not a part of our church, and they were just so moved by what our church was getting involved in that they just wrote some checks and they said, we want to be a part of it even though we can't really be a part of it. That's a big deal. We had visitors at our church. That some of the things that they reported back to us is we didn't know what to expect. I mean, that you sing songs that's about what you believe, and you're talking about the Bible and how it intersects with life, and you're so quick to respond to loving people. It is amazing. It's amazing what God does when a group of people gather together and say, we just want to love Jesus and be about what Jesus is about. I believe, and I'm not blowing smoke, I believe this from my soul down to my toes, that we are a church who's trying to run to win, that we are a church who wants to run to win. Now, if we're going to continue to do that, if we're going to sustain that, I think we got to take on some mindsets. And some of the mindsets are the things that we covered in the service together. We have to know the difference between running and busyness, and it's just so easy to be busy, but the key difference between running and busyness is understanding your purpose. And so we just want to be that kind of church that we're constantly calibrating our hearts and our minds towards what our purpose is. And that's not a one-time thing. That's an all-the-time thing. We have to keep coming back to that. And that's not just for our church, that's for every church. It's why we end our services each weekend the way that we do, reminding ourselves, we don't live for ourselves, we live for the one. We are about the one. We follow the purpose of the one who died for us and was raised again. We got to know the difference between winning and preserving. We stand on the shoulders of some wonderful people who came before us. We dance on the shoulders of wonderful people who came before us. Back in the 1800s, a group of people got together and said, let's start a church. Who knows how to calculate all the lives that have been impacted because of what those people started. And we are in this incredible relay race, and each generation keeps taking the baton and running with it and passing it on to the next. I don't know where we are in this relay race, but I want us to run our leg well. And this is part of what that requires. It's really sitting down and really looking at this. We live in a city of 120,000 people where 100,000 people aren't part of any church. We live in a city of 120,000 people where somewhere around 100,000 people need the gospel and they need Christian community. And I find myself thinking about this question. What is the most important thing we could do? Like if Jesus were here and he just said, tell me what's the most important thing you think you could be about right now? I just can't imagine any answer different from Jesus, we are about, I want to be about making sure that those 100,000 people get to hear about you. They get to see what the gospel is. They get to see what the good news is by the things, not only that we say, but also by the way that we live. And not just by the way that we live, but the things we say too. That we communicate the gospel in every way possible because we want them to know you. Is there anything that could be more important for a church than that? And so I think I said it this Sunday, I don't want to be a hype man, but I do want to be inspiring. I want us to be the kind of church that we steward the opportunity well that we have, and that we are energized by this incredible mission that Jesus has placed in our hands, and we steward that responsibility well, that we want to run to win. And so as your small group huddles up, I hope you enjoy talking about that. I want you to be praying for that. And don't just pray for our church. Pray for the other churches of the community that they run to win too. Let's pray that other churches grow and thrive and find incredible success in reaching people with the gospel, because the needs of this city are far bigger than one church. It's far bigger than 2, 3, or 4 churches. We need many churches in this city who are all about running to win so that people can come to know Jesus and follow him. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if some of you guys were asking questions. On one hand, we're saying our church is incredibly generous, and I believe we are. And at the same time, we're a little bit behind on giving. How can those two things be? Well, I think those two things can exist at the exact same time. And there are a variety of reasons for that. But I believe that this is a season of development, that this is a time for our church to grow. For those of you who are giving financially already, I just want to say thank you. And I bet you would want to say to other people, we invite you to join us in this because it is worth it. There's no better investment than this. When I say that this is a season to grow, I'm not necessarily talking about numerical growth. What I mean is to grow in our discipleship. To be able to say to Jesus, I recognize that all that I have ultimately is a gift from you, and I'm responsible for stewarding the resources and the finances that I have well. And Jesus, I trust you, and out of my grateful joy to you and for all that you've done for me, I want to invest in your purposes, and I'm going to do that in and through my local church, through this church, so that we can continue to move forward, and so that we can run to win. Our ability to reach this community, our ability to have influence, is funded by our collective generosity, by your financial giving. I also want to talk about something else, and sometimes it's hard to know when is the best venue to talk about this, and the weekend services right now don't seem to be the right time to talk about it. So I want to share this with you. You're going to get some inside information, and feel free to talk about this and share this with others. Even if our church was keeping pace with the budget, even if we were even ahead of where we projected to be with giving, we still need to wrestle through some financial realities. We have an incredible resource. Right now I'm standing in the lighthouse. This is an incredible room in the building we have. The building we have is somewhere around 100,000 square feet. We have about 60 acres. We have a tremendous resource that we get to maximize and use as a tool for the sake of the gospel. And for us to maximize the resource that we have, we also have to maintain our resource. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know exactly how much that cost. A couple of years ago, we were able to pay off this facility, which is an amazing thing. And so people think, wait a second, we were paying about $250,000 a year in a mortgage payment, so we should have that money sitting around. Actually, all of that money goes into maintenance and care for the facility, because one of the things that we learned is we weren't keeping up with the adequate maintenance and care, and so that money needed to be redirected towards that. Additionally, to be able to properly fund and care for a facility like the one we have to put aside around $450,000 a year. You heard me right. $450,000 a year just in savings to keep up with the maintenance and the replacement costs of everything related to this property. Now, that has never been an organizational habit here at Autumn Ridge Church. Probably should have been happening from the beginning, but it's never really been a part of what we've done. The money that we've had, we've invested in other ministry things, and we've just kind of gotten to the point where we recognize this is a habit that we need to embrace so that we can make sure that this is sustainable, well-maintained, so it can be maximized for present and ongoing future ministry. And so this is what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to be praying for us. Our pastors, our elders, we're diligently working on a long-term financial plan so that we can make sure that we're taking care of this well. And so right now, I want to ask you to be praying for us. Pray that God would move. Pray that God would move for other people to give, that we would all grow in that area, and that we would steward the opportunities that we have and the resources that we have in a way that honors Jesus and honors this congregation and allows us to move forward and run to win for the sake of the gospel. I hope you have a great discussion, and we'll see you next week.